Hey everyone, Rick here. I got a couple of large packages today from Noble Knight Games, and instead of doing a full-on unboxing video, I decided to take everything out to begin with, just to save some time. Also, I wanted to make sure everything was there. Okay, so I'll just go through some of these. A lot of them are out of print, some are relatively new but obscure. Most of them are still in shrink wrap. It's always nice to get an old game and you're the first one to touch the pieces. So first, here's one that I've never heard of before, and some of these I also plan on doing unboxing videos on at some point in the future. I know I always find it helpful when someone posts an unboxing of a game I've never heard of. So first, this is Magical Arena, a game I've never heard of. It looks to be played on a hex grid. That's better focus. It comes with 4 pewter miniatures, a couple decks of cards, some dice. I assume magical combat in miniature form. There's the contents. This one specifically I plan on doing an unboxing on because there isn't too much information out there on this. Okay, so Magical Arena. Alright. Next, a game called Tempus Draconis. I can't give you too much of a description on this because I'm not all that familiar with it myself. If you want to pause and read the description, feel free. You lay out some kind of hex-tiled map. Looks like you have some cardstock player pawns. So some type of adventure game, I imagine. Next, you may be aware of this. This is a much more popular title, Prophecy, but this is the first time I've ever owned a copy. It's the Z-Man edition. And this is without its shrink wrap, but in basically new condition. And there are already some great videos on that game. Next, this is a game pretty much brand new, Amber. It's a tile-laying game, connecting villages with roads. You can block other people's roads. You score victory points in classic Eurogame fashion. And that is a relatively new release. Next, there's a small stack of some smaller games. Dragon War, which labels itself as the first and only trading card board game. It's relatively old, but each card has spaces on it that you'll move across. So you lay out the dungeon with the cards, and each card has spaces you move your pawns across. And this has been advertised as near mint. Dragon War. Next, we have the 2-player box set of Overlords. There's a whole game system based on Overlords. It's supposed to be a Titan variant for those of you familiar with Titan, the original. But apparently it fell short from what I've heard. But this was a cheap little 2-player box set of the game. Ooh, that map is fairly grisly looking. Next, a card game called Warriors. Now, when you look at the designers of this, you think it would be just awesome. Alan R. Moon and Richard Borg. But apparently, from what I've read, it is not that great of a game. But it was relatively inexpensive. It has a fantasy theme and cards. So, yes, I'm going to end up adding it to my collection. This is the expansion, Dragon Hordes. Here is a relatively new release, I think last year. There's probably a date on here somewhere. Rumble in the Dungeon. It has some interesting mechanics. There are some videos out there on this little title. And a game called Voluspa, if I pronounce that correctly. It's a tile-laying game, scoring victory points based on different criteria. Characters based on Norse mythology. This is the White Goblin Games edition from 2012. There is going to be a reprint in 2013. This game, now we're going back to the obscures. Swords of Glory. This is an older game. Typical war game fashion. Modular hex-tiled map with hexes themselves. Obviously you have your counters, which you will be laying siege to your opponents with. $19.97. Okay. Next, a game I've been wanting for a little while anyway. A brand new in-shrink copy of Return of the Heroes. You can't claim that your fantasy adventure board game collection is complete without Return of the Heroes. And there are some good videos on that as well. Next we have Castle of Magic. And if I'm correct, I haven't looked, on the back of the box there might be a map of the board, and just one look at that might steer you away from ever wanting it. No, there isn't. Go to BoardGameGeek.com, search Castle of Magic, look at the board, and see if your interest in what looks like a fun game dwindles or not. Obviously it didn't for me, but the board looks pretty bad. Here's a game called Camlin's Destiny. It's another war game on your hex map, cards and tokens for the players. There's not too much on this. I might do a video on it by itself. It looks interesting anyway. This is a brand new release, War Party. This had a Kickstarter, which was very successful. There are some very prolific names to have done videos on this already, so I don't feel the need to do that myself. But just as a quick look, it is a fantasy war game. Territories, encounters, lots of dice, and it is a brand new 2013 release. Noble Knight Games had it. That was very cool. Here's a slightly obscure title, Shapeshifters. Oh yeah, if you saw the full flowchart included in this game, it might steer you away. Or it might make you want it more, because it is insane. There's at least one good video on that title. That's in a Ziploc bag. Here's an older title too called Flux, not to be confused with a game of a similar name with a second X. You can pause that if you want to read the details. That's about a 20-year-old game. This is just awesome. I've wanted a copy of this for a while. Conquest of the Fallen Lands. Not to give a rub to an online retailer other than Noble Knight, but Cool Stuff Inc. has a ton of great games at amazing prices, and there was one copy of this left, but it sold before I could get it, and I've wanted it ever since. Noble Knight had this new in shrink for like $35, which was pretty good. Competitive with just about anything else. And these 4 games are all related. It's Quest for the Dragon Lords, Fantasy Warfare. This is the first edition with the red foil cover, and that is so sweet. Now next is the Advanced Game Expansion. This comes with, I don't know, 40 or more, I can't remember how many, pewter figures for the game, so that is sweet. Next is the 5 and 6 player expansion, the Crystal of Power. And last is the 2nd edition. All these Noble Knight games had in stock in shrink, brand new. They are, I would say, my favorite out-of-print game retailer. So I had to get the 2nd edition. But I also had to get the 1st edition, if not only for that sweet as hell cover, which will look just awesome on the shelf. Or shelves, anyway. Next is a game called Ogre Castle. I mean, can you trust a game that comes in a plastic tube? Sure, why not? So there you go. Roll-out cloth map, player pawns, dice, cards, fantasy adventure, Ogre Castle. Okay, so I think that just about does it. So between all of these awesome new games, I have a fairly nice new addition to my collection. And with Noble Knight purchases, they have the every $15 you spend, you can get a 1 cent item free. Or not free, but for 1 cent. You can add a 1 cent item for every $15 you spend. First, this is my 2nd or 3rd deck of these. These are the 2011 Origins Game Fair cards. It's just a standard 52 card deck with a couple jokers. Each card is an advertisement for a retailer or a publisher. Now this has to be my 10th deck of Rat Splatter. 1 cent for this card game. Here's another little card game called Portable Adventures, 8th grade. 1 cent. A postcard for Dust Tactics. The only thing I own of Dust Tactics is the original base set. Of course, the pre-painted edition. The primed is good, but the detail in the pre-painted was amazing. This is a copy of the Quick Start rules for Cosmic Patrol. Then a copy of the Quick Start rules for the Skirmish miniatures game Infinity. And just a sheet of uncut cards, apparently for the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons trading card game, of which I did not know existed. 1 cent for each. So that is my not unboxing of my latest board game purchases. The only other thing I want to say besides look for some individual unboxings of some of the more obscure games, if I can bear to take the shrink wrap off of those who still have it, is also, you may have seen my other video on my blue table painted Empire army for Warhammer Fantasy, and they've been working on 2 more armies of comparable size for me. One for orcs and goblins, which should be completed soon, and another for wood elves, which might be completed a little while after. So eventually look for 2 more videos like I had for my Empire army. That was a fun video to make, and it's currently my most popular video. Who knew? So that'll be coming down the pipeline eventually. And of course, as always, there will be more board games rolling in. So thank you again for watching, and until next time.